Thank you for joining us for today's video presentation. After this video teaching, Brenda and I invite you to visit our website, where you will find many free resources and our video archives of previous teachings. Our bookstore has all of our current books and many of our teachings available on DVD. Also, right on the home page is the sign-up form for our email list, where you will receive our exclusive monthly newsletter. With the newsletter, you will get access to exclusive teachings, Bible research tools and resources, a monthly biblical calendar and Bible reading schedule following the traditional Torah portions, and other exclusive materials and access to future special events. We know that you will enjoy the teaching today. Thank you for joining us. Shalom and be blessed.
While Joseph lived and ruled under Pharaoh, the Hebrew people lived safely and prosperously in the region of Goshen in Egypt. But after Joseph died, things changed drastically. Joseph's deeds were forgotten or dismissed. Instead of seeing the Hebrew people as those who brought deliverance in the time of famine, they were seen as threats. God had prospered the children of Israel as He had promised. Now the Egyptians are both jealous and afraid. Exodus 1, 8-10. Now there arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph, and he said to his people, "Look, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply, and it happen, in the event of war, that they also join our enemies and fight against us, and so go up out of the land." This pattern of jealousy and fear has been repeated throughout history and continues today. It is the pattern of the future and the fulfillment of prophecy. I'm Brenda Cathcart, and this is Shadows of the Messiah. God had promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that their descendants would be as the sand on the seashore. God spoke to Abraham in Genesis 22, 16 and 17. "By myself I have sworn, says the Lord, because you have done this thing and have not withheld your son, your only son, blessing I will bless you, and multiplying I will multiply your descendants as the stars of the heaven and as the sand which is on the seashore, and your descendants shall possess the gate of their enemies." As Israel began his journey to Egypt, God met him in Beersheba with the promise that in Egypt God would make him into a great nation. Genesis 46, 3-4. So he said, "I am God, the God of your father. Do not fear to go down to Egypt, for I will make you a great nation there. I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also surely bring you up again, and Joseph will put his hand on your eyes." There in Egypt, God began to fulfill his promise. The children of Israel multiplied greatly in preparation for taking them out of Egypt and into the promised land. Listen to this description of their incredible growth in Young's literal translation of Exodus 1:7. "And the sons of Israel have been fruitful, and they teem and multiply, and are very, very mighty, and the land is filled with them." There are 5 clauses in this one sentence describing how quickly their population grew. 5 is the number of grace, and it was through God's grace that their numbers grew so quickly. But as God showed favor to the children of Israel, the Egyptians began to fear and hate them. Pharaoh and his advisors know they can't attack the children of Israel openly. There are just too many of them. They decide on subtlety. Exodus 1:11. Therefore they set taskmasters over them to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh supply cities, Pithom and Ramses. This is the first instance in history of the now familiar pattern of anti-Semitism. The pattern begins with a slow seduction of the Jewish people into giving up their freedoms a little at a time. This word translated as taskmaster is the 2-word phrase sar masim. Sar is number 8269 in the Strong's Concordance, meaning a head person, captain, chief, prince, or ruler. The word masim is the plural of mas, number 45 22, meaning a burden, such as in the form of a tax worked out by forced labor. In other words, the first thing Pharaoh did was to place a tax of their labor to build cities for the common good of Egypt. They built cities for the distribution of goods and for the protection of the wealth of Egypt. This type of labor tax is not unusual. Solomon imposed a similar tax on the people when he was building his house in the temple of God. 1 Kings 5:13 through 14a. Then King Solomon raised up a labor force out of all Israel, and the labor force was 30,000 men, and he sent them to Lebanon, 10,000 a month in shifts. They were 1 month in Lebanon and 2 months at home. Like the building of the cities in Egypt, the building of the temple of God was for the common good of all the people. But once a people are enslaved for a specific task, it's easier to keep them enslaved. Pharaoh increased their labor tax burden. The children of Israel had to spend more and more of their time just fulfilling their obligation to Pharaoh until they were forced into complete slavery. Exodus 1:13 through 14. So the Egyptians made the children of Israel serve with rigor, and they made their lives bitter with hard bondage, in mortar, in brick, and in all manner of service in the field. All their service in which they made them serve was with rigor. In spite of the harshness of the working conditions and the unreasonable amount of work they had to do to fulfill their tax, the children of Israel continued to grow in numbers. Exodus 1:12. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew, and they were in dread of the children of Israel. God was with the children of Israel in their affliction. Sometimes it's hard for us to see that God remains with us because He allows us to go through affliction. He allows those that hate us to temporarily have authority over us, His people. The psalmist writes that God hears the cries of the afflicted in Psalms 22:24. For He has not despised nor abhorred the affliction of the afflicted, nor has He hidden His face from him, but when he cried to Him, He heard. Pharaoh's affliction of the children of Israel was not having the desired effect of slowing the growth of their numbers. So Pharaoh instituted his next step in his plan for annihilating the Hebrew threat. He gave orders to the Hebrew midwives that they were to kill all the male children as they were born. Exodus 1:15 through 17. Then the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, of whom the name of one was Shiphrah, and the name of the other Puah. And he said, when you do the duties of a midwife for the Hebrew women, and see them on the birth stools, if it is a son, then you shall kill him. But if it is a daughter, then she shall live. But the midwives feared God, and did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the male children alive. It is interesting that the scriptures record the names of the two Hebrew midwives. These two women refused Pharaoh's orders to kill the male children, claiming that the Hebrew women gave birth to baby boys so fast that the midwives couldn't get there in time to kill the babies as they were born. The names of these two women are Shiphrah and Puah. The name Shiphrah is from the word Shiphrah, number 8235, meaning brightness. The name Puah is number 6326, meaning to glitter or brilliancy. The righteous acts of these two women to save the children glistened and shone with brilliancy. Since this act of Pharaoh to prevent the live births of male children failed, Pharaoh went a step further. He involved all the Egyptians in genocide, encouraging them to throw all the male Hebrew babies into the river. Exodus 1:22. So Pharaoh commanded all his people, saying, every son who is born you shall cast into the river, and every daughter you shall save alive. When this was not working fast enough, Pharaoh apparently began searching the homes of the children of Israel for hidden male children. We can infer this from the situation at Moses' birth. When Moses was born, his parents hid him for as long as they could. Exodus 2:2 through 3. So the woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw that he was a beautiful child, she hid him 3 months. But when she could no longer hide him, she took an ark of bulrushes for him, daubed it with asphalt and pitch, put the child in it, and laid it in the reeds by the river's bank. The Stone Edition Chumash comments on this passage, saying that the Jewish sage Ramban stated that Pharaoh's goal was the extermination of the children of Israel, quoting from the commentary on the Torah portion Shemot. First, slavery in the form of a labor tax, then ordering the midwives to secretly kill male babies, then having every Egyptian throw babies into the river, and finally sending soldiers to search out all Jewish homes for hidden infants. In spite of Pharaoh's plans to annihilate the children of Israel, God had other plans. He had plans to take them out of Egypt and bring them into their own land. God heard the groaning of his people and remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Israel to give them the promised land. Exodus 2:24-25. So God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. And God looked upon the children of Israel, and God acknowledged them. God determined that it was time to bring the children of Israel into the land that he had prepared for them. Exodus 3:8. So I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up from that land to a good and large land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Amorites, and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites. As God brought the children of Israel out of Egypt, he also judged Egypt and all her gods. God's words to Moses before he afflicted Egypt with the 10th plague were that the plagues were a judgment against Egypt and her gods. Exodus 12:12. For I will pass through the land of Egypt on that night, and will strike all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord. Pharaoh's plans to annihilate the children of Israel only led to his own annihilation and the crippling of Egypt. This pattern of anti-Semitism has continued throughout the millennia. Even though Jewish presence in a society brings God's blessing on the society, because of their presence, hatred and jealousy begin to spread. Over and over again we read in the scriptures that blessings fall because of the presence of his children. Laban's flocks prospered because Jacob was taking care of them. Potiphar's household and the king's prison prospered because of Joseph's presence. God promised that when his people went into exile, he would continue to be with them as a little sanctuary. Ezekiel 11:16. Therefore, thus says the Lord God, although I have cast them far among the Gentiles, and although I have scattered them among the countries, yet I shall be a little sanctuary for them in the countries where they have gone. God would be with his people in exile, just like he was with the children of Israel in Egypt. In the 20th century, Hitler's plans mirrored Pharaoh's plans. In spite of the blessings brought to Germany by the population of Jewish people, Hitler was determined to kill them. He started by separating them, marking them as different from the rest of the German population. Then he began imposing a special tax on the Jewish people, finally just outright confiscating their businesses, homes, and possessions. He then deported them under the guise of using them to labor for the good of the Reich. When that didn't kill them fast enough, he began gassing them and burning them alive. But Hitler was finally defeated, and the Jewish people, though battered and beaten, survived. God determined that it was time to bring the children of Israel home to their land, the land of Israel. In 1948, the Jewish state of Israel was reborn. But the pattern of anti-Semitism has not ended. All the Jewish people have not yet returned to their homeland, to Israel. The nations still fear and hate the Jewish people, the children of Israel. The nations continue to seek to kill them, marginalizing them and making them the enemy or a scapegoat. They stir up public opinion against them with outrageous lies until the proliferation of lies is accepted as truth. David prophesied about this day in Psalm 83, 1-4. Do not keep silent, O God. Do not hold your peace, and do not be still, O God. For behold, your enemies make a tumult, and those who hate you have lifted up their head. They have taken crafty counsel against your people, and consulted together against your sheltered ones. They have said, "Come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be remembered no more." But God will hear the voice of his people when they cry out in anguish to him. He will remember his promise to Abraham and bring his descendants home. Isaiah 41, 8 through 9. But you, Israel, are my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, the descendants of Abraham, my friend. You whom I have taken from the ends of the earth and called from its farthest regions, and said to you, "You are my servant. I have chosen you and have not cast you away." God will judge the nations who oppress his people, just like he judged Egypt. Isaiah 41:11. Behold, all those who were incensed against you shall be ashamed and disgraced. They shall be as nothing, and those who strive with you shall perish. God's original promise to Abraham included both blessings and curses. Genesis 12:3. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. The nations that blessed Abraham would in turn be blessed. The blessing is there, like it was there for Laban, Potiphar, and Pharaoh. But instead of blessing the children of Israel, they cursed them, and the blessing they could have received is rejected. Time after time, nations and peoples turn their backs on the Jewish people, cursing instead of blessing. The time is quickly approaching when God will call his people out of the nations to return en masse to Israel. The nations are resisting as hard as they can, persecuting the Jewish people first and the Christians second. Those of us who believe in Yeshua, our Messiah, are grafted into the Commonwealth of Israel. We have common cause with the Jewish people. However, the nations are attempting to close off Israel and make it impossible for her people to go home. But God has other plans. Which side will you be on? Will you bless Israel and receive the blessing he has for you in return? Or will you curse Israel and receive the curse he has for all those who curse Israel? Thanks for watching today. I'm Brenda Cathcart, and this is Shadows of the Messiah. Shalom and be blessed.